This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report, as we move now to our last segment. Juan?
Well, as we enter the second quarter of 2010, the country is still struggling to recover from what has been dubbed the Great Recession. Millions of Americans are suffering the economic woes of the financial collapse, and towns and cities across the country are making drastic budget cuts as they struggle to stay above water. In the meantime, Wall Street has been posting record profits, and big banks are doling out billions of dollars in bonuses. How is this possible? Well, a new article in Rolling Stone magazine by journalist Matt Taibbi takes an in-depth look at the experience of one small Alabama town. The article says banking giant J.P. Morgan bribed city officials in Jefferson County to get exclusive rights to help finance the construction of a new sewer system for that city.
Matt Taibbi writes, quote, in a sewer project that was originally supposed to cost $250 million, the county now owed a total of $1.28 billion just in interest and fees on the debt. He goes on to write, the destruction of Jefferson County reveals the basic battle plan of these modern barbarians, the way that banks like J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs have systematically set out to pillage towns and cities from Pittsburgh to Athens. Matt Taibbi joins us here in our Firehouse studio. His article is called Looting Main Street. Welcome to Democracy Now! Lay it out for us. What did the banks do?
Well, basically, it's a very long story, but what happened was the city of Birmingham and Jefferson County, they were sued by the EPA back in the early 90s. They had a faulty sewer system. They were forced to build a new sewer system, and so they borrowed a ton of money to build this new sewer system. All the local politicians used about $3 billion of this money. They funneled it to all their buddies who are contractors. And then when the rent came due on all of this, when they had to start paying for this, they didn't want to do it because raising rates would have been politically unpopular. So they went to Wall Street and they basically refinanced their debt. And that's what this is all about. And these deals for refinancing the debt were so lucrative that the banks basically fought over who would get these contracts. And the method for getting the contracts was to funnel millions of dollars to buddies of the county commissioners, who then in turn followed the county commissioner around with charge cards and paid for their Ferragamo suits and Rolex watches. And that's how Jefferson County ended up getting into a situation where they had $5 billion in debt on a $250 million sewer project.
And the actual project was about $3 billion to build, or was it? Yeah,
the initial estimate for this project was $250 million. They ended up spending about $3 billion in this, and they ended up owing about $5 billion in the end, after you look at all the refinancing and the interest rate swaps and everything.
And you go through the various schemes that the banks came up with. Credit default swaps, was it? Or
interest rate
swaps.
Right. These are also derivatives. Again, there's this whole galaxy of financial instruments that are basically unregulated thanks to a law that was passed in 2000 called the Commodity Futures Modernization Act. Credit default swaps, collateralized debt obligations, interest rate swaps. These are all derivatives. They're all totally unregulated. So there's no SEC or CFTC that's really looking at these things. And so as a result of this, a lot of these deals fly under the radar completely. And there's no way to really enforce or prevent fraud in any of this stuff.
And then the people who live in the county end up paying sewer bills that went quadrupled in price?
Right, and that was only one part of the cost. The average sewer bill in the mid-'90s for a Jefferson County resident was between $10 and $14. The bill by the time I got there a couple of months ago was at least 400% of that. But I met people who had sewer bills that were as high as $200 when I went down to Jefferson County. And that's one small part of the cost, because what happened was when Jefferson County failed to pay off some of this debt, their credit rating was downgraded and their cost of borrowing across the board skyrocketed. So as a result, their taxes went up, and they had to lay off lots of county employees. And so it's even beyond the sewer bill, it was a major catastrophe.
Tell us the story of Lisa Pack, Matt.
Well, she was a county employee. She was a person who had a small, sewer bill, but she was laid off. She was put on forced leave last summer, along with thousands of other county employees, and ended up basically living on $250 a week, along with thousands of other people. They canceled her health insurance. She had to pay for that now, and she is now so disgusted by the fact that there were so many people indicted in this scheme that she's now running for county commissioner herself. And that's something that's a consistent theme of the financial crisis. People are so fed up that they have to run for public office themselves just to get the government that they they want.
And as many as 20 people have been convicted, public officials involved in taking bribes in one form or another?
Public officials and contractors. There's a whole list of county commissioners. Almost everybody who was served in county government in the last decade got indicted or investigated in one way or another. But nobody, here's the key part, nobody from any of the banks has been criminally prosecuted.
Name the banks.
Well, J.P. Morgan was the big one. The big player in this was a J.P. Morgan banker named Charles LaCroix. And there's a hilarious record of J.P. Morgan was taping their own phone conversations. And we actually hear this guy, LaCroix, talking about how he went to the county commissioner and said, just tell us how much you want, for us to get this deal. But he hasn't been prosecuted for this. Nobody at J.P. Morgan has. They had to pay a fine, and they had to forego a $647 million bill that they presented to the county. But nobody's going to jail. And that's another consistent theme of the financial crisis.
They paid off Goldman Sachs to stay away?
This is my favorite detail of this whole thing. When the county commissioner, Larry Langford, was first elected, he kind of put the word out that anybody who wanted to do business with the county had to go, quote unquote, see his buddy Bill Blount, who was a local investment banker. Well, Goldman Sachs already had a relationship with this Blount. And J.P. Morgan wanted this deal so badly that they paid Goldman Sachs $3 million to dissociate itself from Bill Blount and leave the deal. And so that was, it's obvious, open and shut, anti-competitive behavior. But again, that hasn't been prosecuted either.
And of course, J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs of the major financial institutions, have come off probably the best throughout the entire financial crisis.
J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, they're really the kings of the hill. Obviously, a lot of the major investment banks have fallen by the wayside in the last couple of years, but these are the two ascendant organizations left on Main Street.
And how widespread do you figure this problem is of major financial institutions bilking local governments with these kinds of schemes?
This scheme is not at all uncommon. I think in Jefferson County it might have been a little bit more obscene and cartoonish than it is in other places, but there are communities all over America that are starting to see these interest rate swap deals blow up. The Pennsylvania school system, Detroit, the city of Detroit, Los Angeles, Oakland, Chicago, they're everywhere. And so we're going to start seeing what happened in Jefferson County occur in counties all over the country.
How does this compare to Greece, to what happened to Greece?
Well, it's similar. In both cases, interest rate swaps were used. The situation was a little bit different in Greece because they were using it basically to get some cash up front to qualify for an EU program. But it's the same unregulated class of financial instruments, and a more exact parallel is what happened in Milan, Italy. They were also using interest rate swaps very similar to Jefferson County, and there are hundreds of communities across Europe that are in the same situation.
Could you explain how an interest rate swap works? Because I remember talking to a chief controller here, deputy controller here in New York City, asked her to explain to me an interest rate swap, and she had trouble.
It sounds very, very complicated. Imagine that you have a variable rate mortgage, so you're paying a mortgage where the payment rises or falls every month along with interest rates. Well, that's risky, so you might want to get some certainty in your rates. So you'll go to your bank and you'll say, I'll agree to pay you a fee if you take over my variable interest payments and give me fixed payments. So basically, you're paying the bank a fee to assume your variable rate risk, and that's all it is. You're swapping rates. And so what happened was Jefferson County had variable interest rates on some of the bond deals that it had done. It wanted fixed rates. It went to J.P. Morgan and paid them fees to get their fixed rates.
So how does that blow up then?
Well, what ended up, first of all, it cost you something. All these fees, every time they went and did one of these swaps, it pushed their debt situation farther into the future. And so they didn't just do it once or twice. They did it 23 times in Jefferson County. These politicians kept continually pushing the debt into the future. And every time they did that, they added more debt because, of course, this cost something. So by the end, it just ballooned to the point where it exploded.
Matt, we have 5 seconds. Has any regulation been instituted to change all this?
No. I mean, we have the financial reform bill right now, but as currently written, it really wouldn't do a whole lot to change this, but it might. There's still a chance that it might.
Matt Taibbi, political reporter for Rolling Stone. His latest article is called Looting Main Street. We'll link to it at democracynow.org. That does it for our show. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Burke, Shrufa Dokudusa, Matt Angeli, Kamat, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Masood, Rabi Karen. Condolences to Anjali on the death of her grandmother. I'll be speaking in New Haven, Yale Law School on Thursday, University of Maryland, Baltimore Friday. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.